Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the third and the final session on introduction to 19th century novel. And we stopped last time on this slide talking about practical strategies for analysis. So, analyzing language and form, dictation. Notice formal versus colloquial language, abstract versus concrete words, Latinate versus Anglo-Saxon vocabulary, imagery, track sensory details, metaphors, similes, and what they suggest about character settings and themes. Syntax, observe sentence structures, complexity, length, rhythm, and their effects on pacing and emphasis. Point of view, analyze narrative perspectives, effects on what readers know, and how they judge characters and events. Identifying themes and motifs. Um, Themes represent novels, larger ideas or questions, not simple messages, but complex exploration of human experience. Identify themes by noting recurring topics or uh, situations across the narrative, characters, explicit statements about values or beliefs, conflicts between different value uh, systems or worldviews, symbols or images carrying thematic significance, titles relationship to narrative content, resolutions, implications about human nature, society, or morality. Motifs, recurring elements like images, symbols, or situations support themes through repetition that creates patterns of meaning. For example, in Jane Eyre, fire and ice appear repeatedly as motives associated with passion and reason, with freedom and constraint. Learning to identify and analyze themes and motifs is central to literary interpretation. This is how we move from describing what happens in a plot to examining what a novel means, what larger questions it explores, and what insights it offers. This concludes part one of our recording session. We're covered gender and society, industrialization, and cross-conflict narrative techniques and critical approaches. We will continue with connecting texts to their contexts, practical reading strategies, and why studying Victorian novels remain vital today. Thank you, and we will continue. Next slide. Evidence-based interpretation. Always support interpretive claims with specific textual evidence. Quote relevant passages, analyze their language precisely, and explain how they support your argument. Strong literary analysis balances close attention to text with broader interpretive claims. Connecting texts to their contexts. Great literary analysis connects close textual reading to broader historical, social and cultural contexts, understanding Victorian Britain's complexities, its contradictions, anxieties, and transformations enables richer interpretation of novels that both reflected and shaped their world's context. Doesn't determine meaning, but opens interpretive possibilities and prevents anachronistic misreadings. Economic transformation, industrialization, urbanization, and the capitalist expansion restructured economic life, creating new forms of work, wealth, and poverty. Novels depicted these changes, human causes, and possibilities, examining how economic forces shaped individual lives and social relationships. Understanding economic contexts illuminates class conflicts, marriage, economics, and social mobility themes. Political developments, reform movements, extending suffrage, improving working conditions, reforming education reflected and generated social tensions, explored in fiction, Chartism, women's right creation, and debates about democracy shaped novels. Political consciousness, authors often advocated reform while fearing revolutionary change tensions reflected in their works, political visions. Scientific advances, evolutionary theory, geographical discoveries, and medical developments challenged religious certainties and traditional worldviews. Novels engaged scientific ideas, exploring their implications for human identity, morality, and faith. Darwin's theories practically influenced later Victorian fiction, deterministic elements, and psychological complexity. Underlying social hierarchies and tensions, class structures, and mobility. Victorian society remained highly stratified despite industrialization, social fluidity, aristocratic privilege persisted alongside new industrial wealth, while middle classes expanded and asserted respectability and defining virtue. Working class organized the unions and demands and demanded political representations, challenging assumptions about natural social hierarchy. Novels explored class through various lenses, satirizing aristocratic presentations, depicting middle class anxieties about maintaining respectability, examining working class life, and questioning whether merit could overcome birth. Marriage plots often involved class tensions, with characters navigating desires conflicting with social expectations. Gender relations and separate spheres. Victorian ideology prescribes separate spheres, public for men, domestic for women, justified through supposedly a natural gender differences. However, this this ideology contradicted many women's actual experiences, particularly working class women whose labor was economically necessary. Novels both reinforced and questioned gender ideologies, depicting women's frustrations with limitations, while often concluding with marriages that restored social order, understanding over coverture laws which made married women legally non existent, limited education and employment opportunities, and social expectations enables the nuanced reading of female characters' choices and constraints. Imperial context, Victorian Britain's global empire shaped national identity and economy or economic prosperity while generating anxieties about racial difference, colonial governance, and imperial overreach. Even domestic novels reference empire through colonial fortunes, finding characters comfort, colonial settings providing plot resolution, or colonial others defining British identity, understanding imperialism's pervasiveness enables recognition of its subtle presence throughout Victorian literature. Suggested reading list for students. This carted reading list provides entry points into 19th century British fiction's rich diversity. Each work represents significant themes, styles, or innovations while offering compelling narratives that continue engaging readers today. Begin with texts matching your interests, gradually expanding to explore different genders and authors. Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, 1838. John's social realism coming of age. Follow the orphan Oliver through London's criminal underworld in this searing critic of Victorian poverty and institutional cruelty. Dickens' memorable characters and the social commentary established templates for social engaged fiction. Key themes: child welfare, class division, moral corruption, resilience. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë, 1847. John Gothic romance. Bildingerson, Bildungsroman. Bildungsroman. Roman. Experience Jane's journey from orphaned child to independent woman in this groundbreaking first person narrative. Brown's combines Gothic atmosphere with pro to feminist themes, creating one of literature's most memorable heroines. Key themes: female independence, social class, morality, passion versus duty. The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot, 1860. Genre psychological realism, tragedy. Explore Maggie Tulver's intellectual and emotional development. Um, Constrained by provincial societies, limitations, Eliot's psychological depth and the moral complexity reward cheerful reading. Key themes: gender constraints, family loyalty, intellectual aspiration, tragic fate. Aurora Lee by Elizabeth Parrott Browings, 1856. John Verse novel Roman. This innovative verse novel traces a women poet's development, challenging gender expectations while exploring the relationship between art and social engagement. Parrott's Browning's ambitious work combines personal narrative with social critic key themes, female artistry, social reform, independence, poetry, purpose, length notes, substantial verse novel requiring patience but offering unique rewards. The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, 1891. Genre Gothic philosophical fiction. Wilde's only novel combines Gothic elements with philosophical exploration of uh, aestheticism, morality, and artist nature. The portrait that ages while Dorian remains beautiful creates powerful mediation on beauty, corruption, and authenticity. Key themes: aestheticism, moral corruption, appearance versus reality, art's purpose, bonus, wild, witty, epigrams, and paradoxes make this endless quotable. Reading strategies don't feel obligated to read chronologically. Start with whichever novel most intrigues you, using that enthusiasm to propel you through Victorian's prose initial unfamiliarity. Consider reading shorter workers or works like The Picture of Dorian Gray before tackling Dickens' longer novels. Tips for engaging with 19th century novels. Victorian novels can initially seem don't long, don't long, tensely written, referencing unfamiliar contexts. However, with appropriate strategies and patience, these works become accessible and deeply rewarding. The following practical tips will enhance your reading experience and comprehension. Breaking reading into manageable sections. Victorian novels' length can feel overwhelming. Divide long novels into sections corresponding to chapters or serialization breaks. Many were published in installments. Set realistic daily or weekly reading goals. Consistency matters more than speed. Allow time between reading sessions to select on what you've read and consolidate understanding. Remember that Victorian readers often encountered these novels in monthly installments spread over 18 to 24 months, savoring each section rather than rushing through. Embrace slower pacing that allow appreciation of language and detail. Use annotated editions for historical notes. Annotated editions provide invaluable contextual information, explaining historical references, clarifying archaic language, identifying literary allusions, and eliminating social conventions. Norton Critical Editions, Oxford Walls Classics, and Benjamin classics for excellent annotations that enrich understanding without overwhelming the reading experience. Don't feel obligated to read every note on first reading. Initially, focus on notes, clarifying confusing passages, return to more detailed notes during rereading or when writing analytical essays. Discuss themes and the characters in a study groups. Collaborative learning enhances comprehension and enjoyment. Study groups provide opportunities to test interpretations, discover perspectives you might miss, clarify confusing passages, and maintain motivation. Discussion reveals the novel's richness. Different readers notice different elements, and the conversations generates insights impossible in isolation. Structure discussion around specific questions or passages rather than general impressions. Come prepared with market passages or questions to focus conversation productively. A foundation for justice. As we conclude this comprehensive introduction to human rights, it's essential to recognize the transformative potential of what students have learned. Human rights education is not simply an academic exercise or a box to check in curriculum requirements. It represents a profound investment in building a more um, just, peaceful, and equitable world. One student, one classroom, one community at a time. The knowledge students have gained, the skills they've developed, and the values they've cultivated through this course equip them to be forces for positive change in ways both large and small, immediate and long term. Write reflective responses and ethical essays. Writing clarifies thinking and deepens understanding. Keep a reading journal recording initial responses, questions, notable passages, and developing interpretations. Writing forces articulation of vague impressions, revealing gaps in understanding and patterns across the text. Analytical essays develop close reading skills and argumentation abilities. Begin with specific textual questions, support claims with evidence, and revise substantially good literary analysis. Immerse through writing process, not just before it. Embrace the unfamiliar. Victorian prose differs from contemporary writing, more formal, elaborate, using absolute words or complex syntax. Rather than viewing this as absolute, appreciate it as opportunity to expand linguistic range and historical understanding. Unfamiliarity can become pleasurable as you develop fluency with Victorian style. Context clues often clarify unfamiliar words without dictionary consultation, allowing uninterpreted reading flow. However, do not hesitate to look up persistently confusing terms. Understanding enhances appreciation. Connected to contemporary issues, Victorian novels remain relevant because they address enduring human concerns, identity formation, social justice, love and loss, moral choice, power, and inequality. While specific contexts differ, fundamental questions persist. Connecting historical themes to contemporary issues makes Victorian literature feel immediate rather than distant. Consider how do Victorian explorations of class inequality eliminate current economic disparities. What do 19th century gender debates reveal about ongoing feminist struggles? How do colonial representation relate to contemporary discussions of race and power? Why study the 19th century British novel? As we conclude this introduction, let's reflect on why 19th century British novels deserve your attention, time, and intellectual engagement. These works aren't merely historical artifacts, but living texts that continue speaking to contemporary concerns, offering insights into human nature, social organization, and moral complexity that transcend their original contexts. Understand modern literature's roots, contemporary fiction from character development to narrative techniques to thematic preoccupations built on Victorian innovations. Understanding 19th century novels illuminates modern literature's genealogy, revealing how current forms emerged from Victorian experiments and transformations. The psychological depth, social engagement, and the narrative sophistication we value in contemporary fiction have Victorian origins. Explore timeless themes. Victorian novels address enduring human concerns, identity, formation, moral notice, love and loss, power and justice, individual versus society tensions. While contexts change, fundamental questions persist. How do we become ourselves? What constitutes a meaning of a life? How should we respond to justice? What obligations do we owe others? Victorian authors explored these questions with sophistication and the nuance that remains relevant. Develop critical thinking skills, analyzing complex literary texts, develops transferable analytical skills, close reading, evidence-based argumentation, interpretive flexibility, historical contextualization. These abilities extend beyond literature to any field requiring careful analysis, nuanced interpretation, and persuasive communication. Literary study trains minds for complexity, ambiguity, and careful judgment. Connect the past and present. Studying Victorian novels reveals both historical distance and continuity, understanding how Victorians grappled with industrialization, social change, and cultural transformation. Um, Illuminates our own era's challenges, technological disruption, economic inequality, social justice struggles. History doesn't repeat, but it rhythms. And Victorian literature helps us recognize patterns and possibilities in our present moments. Your journey to or into Victorian literature begins here. This course offers opportunity for intellectual growth, analytical development, and genuine pleasure. Victorian novels reward sustained attention with rich characterizations, compelling narratives, and profound insights into human experience. As you embark on this journey through 19th century Britain literary landscape, approach these texts with curiosity, patience, and openness. Allow yourself to be challenged, moved, and transformed by some of literature's greatest achievements. The reading list awaits the discussions, promises, engagement. The analytical challenges will develop your ability. Most importantly, the novels themselves, with their memorable characters, compelling stories, and enduring wisdom, stand ready to ensure your understanding of literature, history, and human nature. Welcome to the magnificent world of the 19th century British novel. Your adventure begins now. Thank you so much for watching me teaching you an introduction to 19th century novel in 3 sessions. Until next time, next subject, next material, that's all for now.